All right, thank you very much for coming. It's very great that you're here.
So, align your money with your values. That's what this is about. And we do a disclaimer that we are not financial professionals and we're not trying to give you any kind of financial advice, but we will give you things we hope will be helpful. And I'm not going to try to read this through, but basically the reason we're here is that we all use banks or credit cards or credit unions, and some of us have investments, and in one way or another we participate in the financial system. And one thing that we know very well, and I'm sure you do too, is that financial institutions, especially the big ones, are part of the funding for fossil fuels. And so we are going to talk about where that happens and how you can make decisions about how much you want to participate in supporting fossil fuels, which are a big, big driver of climate change, and where you might want to make different choices. So I'm Sia Stewart, and this is Tom Rawson. We are both members of Third Act Massachusetts, and together we chair the Finance and Pensions team, which is one of the teams within Third Act Massachusetts. Tom lives in Cambridge. I live in Western Mass in Conway. And we've been doing these presentations and we're sort of fine-tuning it, so we're always interested to hear what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And the reason we're here, of course, is because there are things we can do about where our money goes. So Third Act Massachusetts is one of the many working groups within Third Act, the national organization, which was founded in 2021 by Bill McKibben and others. And there are, within that broad umbrella, there are working groups in many states, not all, and there are also working groups that are not geographical but are by interest, so affinity, I think they call it. So lawyers and unions and faith and creatives, and I think there's one or
Educators.
two. Educators, yes.
I'm a retired educator.
Oh, yeah, so he's a retired educator, I'm a retired librarian. So,
Just
yes,
to say that Third Act is for people over 60.
it is
I'm not
mainly
gonna
for
say that.
people over 60. Thank you for bringing that up, yeah. We don't really look at people's birth certificates, but yes, the intention is that this is for people who are in the third act of their lives and are choosing to do something about climate or democracy or both in the third act of their lives.
The phrase that is sometimes used is experienced Americans.
Right. Right.
For better or worse.
And then I will also say that as we go along, we're not going to save questions to the end, although we do have kind of a short period of time. Do ask questions as they come up if you want to. So the big financial institutions are the ones that are most involved with fossil fuels, and tonight we're going to talk about these four topics with a focus on banking and credit cards, and then touching on insurance and investments. But one of the things that we will give you, not in print because it's all links, is a 2-page resource list that is annotated so you know what these links are for, that tie into the things we'll cover tonight.
We'll also send you a PDF of the slides, and there are some links in the slides as well.
Yeah.
Which will get sent out with our newsletter. There'll be a link in the newsletter.
Okay.
And it will be tied to the presentation, so it won't just be the slides, because they're less useful without the presentation. So we know that big financial institutions are major funders of the fossil fuel industry. We know that that's tied to climate change, and we know that there are ways you can choose how involved you want to be in that, and ways to make choices. And one thing to remember always is that these are financial institutions. There is no perfect financial institution. So what we're trying to do is choose the best that we can. We'll start with banking. So banking, what we're hoping to show you is how you can evaluate your current bank, your current credit card, your current whatever it is, that financial institution it is, and evaluate how well that ties in with your values. And if you're not happy with it, with any of them, there are ways to evaluate and find institutions that are closer to your values. So one of the things that's really a positive way to look at this is that with those choices, you can choose. It's not just that you're choosing not to fund fossil fuels, but you can also choose institutions that are actively doing good in their communities or actively supporting values that are important to you. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So for banks and credit unions, obviously the problem is that they're using our money to fund fossil fuels. There are various types of banks, and these ones tend to be the real problems, the big national banks. Fortunately, there are other choices. So regional banks tend to be better. They're not big enough to be major investors in fossil fuels, but you still have to check. You're still advised to check and see whether your institution is doing what you want it to do. There are also community banks, and Tom has incorporated in this slide some of the ones that maybe are in this general area. And then credit unions. So with credit unions, by definition, they are not going to be investing in fossil fuels because they are member-owned. They're not big enough, and this is also true of the smaller community banks. They're not big enough to be part of the fossil fuel investment system. So community banks are a great place to start if you're not happy with your current bank. Credit unions are possibly even better. And when you see the resource list, you'll see there's one new to us anyway, credit union called Clean Energy Credit Union, whose stated mission is to promote clean energy, environmental stewardship, and cooperative enterprises through the financial services they provide to their members. So they're not all as targeted as that, but that's one I just recently learned about.
Are they local to us?
They are, you would join online. I don't actually know if they have a physical location, but
Yeah, they have headquarters presumably, but I don't know if they have a lot of branches.
yeah.
And I don't know where they're based.
But we understand that it's easy to join. So with a lot of credit unions, you have to be part of a specific group. You have to be employees of or have certain affiliations. Not with this one. We're not saying join that one, but we just learned about it, so you might want to check it out.
What was it called again?
It's called the Clean Energy Credit Union,
It's on the resource.
and it is on the resource list. So Tom has also done this nice flow chart that helps you figure out how well your existing bank or credit union fits your values. So is it one of these 4 types of institutions? If it's big, you pretty much want to change it. If it's regional, you can check it out using this website, Mighty Deposits, which is really a pretty phenomenal website. You can search for the bank itself. You can, when you get to the stage of, if you have decided you want to switch, then you can search for banks that fit any of a number of criteria, geographic, how they spend their money. Do they invest a lot in the community? Are they a B Corp institution, which is a nonprofit that focuses on sustainability? Is it a minority-owned institution? Lots of different criteria that you can use to filter your search through that website called Mighty Deposits, which is also on the resource list. A community bank, you're probably fine, but you should review to see how well it fits what you want it to be doing. Credit union, again, is probably fine.
Can I mention something to you?
Yes.
One thing you'll find on the resource list is links to the Massachusetts Community Reinvestment Act, which lets you look at how much of the money the bank holds it's reinvesting in the community, if that's something that's important to you.
I just looked up Middlesex Savings Bank. I'm very proud of myself. It has every $50 of community investment for every $100 you deposit. 100% of your money with this bank is based in Mass, above average in small business lending, above average in housing lending, and above average in financing communities overall.
Yeah.
I love this website.
Yeah.
I don't know how widespread the state information is in terms of whether other states have it, but in addition to Mighty Deposits, the state site has a lot of info about Massachusetts based banks.
Right. If you do wind up looking for a new bank, Mighty Deposits is a great place to start. You might know of a particular bank in the community that you want to check out. That's a good place to check it out. You can also do things like, consult friends who use that bank, people who know its reputation, or you may know its reputation. So we're not saying only use Mighty Deposits. There are other ways to evaluate it, but and there are other websites, but we've left them off this because they don't give you as much information, and their databases don't seem to be as big. So that really is the place that we would point you at least to start.
Yeah, some of them look big because they list every branch, but it doesn't actually list in that many banks. So
it's kind of the same situation here, although we have left off, we've sort of screened out big because we know that's not where you're going to find a bank that is not invested in the fossil. I don't think I said that right. Whatever I meant.
you got it.
Okay. So once you've decided, if you decide that you do need to move to a different bank, this is a simplified process for how you move your money. And so I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically you're watching out for everything that comes out of your bank or goes into your bank automatically. You want to redirect those things. You want to open your new account. You want to start moving in enough money to handle the transition. And you can get a debit card from that new bank if you want. You obviously are going to let the people who are billing you or who are depositing, doing automatic deposits into your account, you're going to want to go through all of that. It takes a little while, and mostly what it takes is some organization to keep lists of all the people you need to notify. One thing I'll just point out here is you want to document what you're doing. You want to keep records of, there are checklists, and here there's an organization called This Is What We Did, which gives you a template for various things. And there's another checklist, I think, in Green America. And so what you're going to want to be doing is keeping records as you go along, and make sure you covered everything. And then, which this is something that's quite important for to have the results of this spread farther than just your own finances. Let the bank know why you're leaving, and let the new bank know why you are choosing that bank. Because they do apparently really listen. It might not change how that bank operates, but if enough people tell them what they're doing, then that filters up.
And especially going and talking to the branch manager of your old bank is worthwhile, and they do. Everybody I've talked to says they do listen and they do really want to hear this.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Tom.
All right. So credit cards, the big picture story is pretty similar, but the way you find out what's going on and what you do about it is specific to credit cards. So we'll start with this. Every credit card has a brand and an issuer. And everybody, what you think of as a credit card is the brand. I have an LL Bean credit card. I have a Citibank credit card. I have a Citizens Bank credit card. That's what I have, etc. So that's the name on the front of the card. The brands can be national, regional banks. Most community banks and credit unions have their own branded card. Retailers have branded cards, right? There's a Costco card, there's a Target card, etc. And these are not gift cards. These are actual credit cards issued by the retailers, or excuse me, marketed by the retailers. Some nonprofits have credit cards. Nature Conservancy has one. AAAS, which is the American Association for the Advancement of Science, has one, etc. I just picked a couple of examples. The brand mostly doesn't matter for what we are trying to do here. So you'll see why in a minute. But that's what everybody's used to thinking of. Like I said, I have an LL Bean credit card. That's not what's actually important about whether that credit card company is financing climate destruction. Similarly, cards are linked to processing networks. Visa, MasterCard, and also American Express and Discover have their own. That's the network that actually, sends the electronic transaction through. Those don't matter either. That's not where the issue is. The problem is the issuer of the card. And that is not in big print on the front of the card in most cases. In some cases you can tell. If you have a card that's a Citibank card, Citibank is going to be the issuer. Usually in small print on the back of the card, it will tell you who issued the card. That's the company that's actually handling the money flow for that card, is the issuer. So for example, if you have an LL Bean credit card, and those are issued by Citibank, and there's actually a third act campaign going on right now to try to get LL Bean to change that. And what happens is, or say you have a AAAS card, like I mentioned in the previous slide, that's a scientific organization. The reason they do that is they get a small percentage of the transaction. I think it's about 0.5%. Okay? But many of those cards are issued by problematic issuers. The issuers are the big national banks. Some smaller and regional banks and credit unions issue their own. For example, I'm just using my own personal experience. Citizens Bank, which is a regional bank here, that I'm sure people are familiar with, issues their own cards. But many cards that you think of as coming from some organization or some smaller bank or whatever are actually issued by somebody else. Okay? And an issuer, as I said, can issue their own cards. Citibank issues Citibank cards. They also issue Costco in the past. Is it still? I think it still is.
Yeah.
They issue LL Bean cards, etc. So what you want to do, if you've got your credit card, is look at the back and see who issues it. And most of them will say, so look at the issuers. The big one to pay attention to here, because it won't be on the front of your card, is Elon Financial. This is a huge credit card issuer for over 1,000 banks. And I checked today because I wanted to see, they also issue cards for other, organizations and retailers. And they are a problem. They invest a lot of money in fossil fuels. And these major banks issue cards, and the ones with the stars, the 4 with the stars, Bank of America, Chase, Citi, and Wells Fargo together provided $135 billion of fossil fuel financing a couple of years ago. And this list should look kind of familiar related to what Sia was saying, right? Big national banks are not what you want. So what do? You want to look for an issuer that doesn't fund fossil fuels, and there are lots of them. There's a bunch of them. Here's a list of some big ones. First National Bank of Omaha and TCM Bank are issuers for a bunch of cards. I don't know which ones. American Express is not a fossil fuel funder. Discover and Diners Club used to be independent. They were just within the last month purchased by Capital One, and Capital One is a minor lender to fossil fuel companies. So it's not as clean as it was. And some of these others, like for example, Synchrony Bank, they're the issuer for Sam's Club, for PayPal cards, for Venmo cards. So you're looking to see who issues the card. And if you're thinking about a card, you get an offer for a card, you think, oh, is this climate friendly? Find out who issues it. It might be right there. You might have to ask, and then look up the issuer. And if it's a bank, you can look it up using Mighty Deposits. The other thing is that the credit unions often offer cards that are issued not by each individual credit union, because they're too small to issue their own cards, but by the credit union associations. And those are fine, because again, the credit union world is not financing fossil fuels. So you're either looking for an issuer, and again, this might not be an exhaustive list, but it gives you some examples. You're looking for an issuer that is not financing fossil fuels, and that includes the credit union associations. And I guess I will say, you have to ask, but it's not hard to find credit cards that are not funding fossil fuels. The problem is that it's not obvious when you look at the card. And even some, I think it was on an earlier slide, even some climate-friendly banks are using issuers that are not, for their own cards that are not climate-friendly. So, again, very easy to find one, but you have to ask. Look at the back of your card, look up the issuer. So, here are some good choices. If you have a Massachusetts credit union that issues its own card or uses one of the credit union associations, or a Massachusetts community bank, or a regional bank that issues its own card. When I started going down this road, we're longtime customers of Citizens Bank. They're not perfect. They sort of have a B grade in the fossil fuel world, not an A. But we had a complicated set of relationships. This is the don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good story. But when I had my credit cards were Citibank and Chase, and when I went to Citizens and said, who issues your cards? They said, we do. So I switched to one of their cards. You have some good choices with local banks that issue their own cards, or a regional bank like Citizens, and there are probably others. I just happen to know that one.
Yes. So what are the Visa and MasterCard things?
So Visa and MasterCard are processing networks. It's like they handle they send the information around to make the transaction happen. And I guess they're brands also, but they are not financial. Visa is not a financial institution.
That's what I didn't know.
They're
Okay.
a processing network.
So they do not, they're neutral in terms of whether they support fossil fuels.
Well, so if you look at Visa, they're taking a percentage of every transaction, right? Same for MasterCard. I don't know what they're doing with that money, but that's not an area where you have much choice, okay? Because there are only, as far as I know, there are only 4 processing networks: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. And I don't think there's some idea that one of them is climate friendly and the other one is not. And if you're going to issue, if you're an issuer trying to set up a credit card, you have to use a processing network. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. So there are also cards issued by some of those out-of-state banks that I listed before that don't invest in fossil fuels. That's what the little asterisk sort of says. See the previous slides for examples. credit union associations, etc. And again, there are many retailer and nonprofit organization cards that are problematic, and there are many that are not, and you have to find out, see who issues it.
Tom, before you leave this slide, a lot of what we've learned from a guy in Third Act, upstate New York, and named Michael Richardson. He does a lot of these trainings of one way or another. And we were on a call with him yesterday, and he called out, he was saying that if you have trouble finding a credit card that you like, you can try Amalgamated Bank for their credit card. You don't have to have, I don't know where they're based, but not in Massachusetts. You don't have to have, apparently, don't have to have an account with them. You can just get the card from them. So just a piece of information we just learned, at least I just learned.
Another point he made that you reminded me of that I wanted to mention is, if you have a card from a nonprofit organization because you like them, and every transaction gives them 0.5% or something, you are actually better off, if they're using a problematic issuer, to go get a card from a good issuer that has cash back and take the cash back, which will be more than that 0.5%, and give it to them.
Yeah.
It's better for everybody. So the process, you find a new card, you have to, if you have a security freeze on, you have to remove it, because you can't switch your cards around without. Yeah.
What's the name of the website that tells you which issuers are great, bad, and mediocre?
I don't think we have one website
Yes,
for that.
You said Mighty
With Mighty
something.
Deposits, but
Mighty
that's all.
If it's a bank, you
That's a
can
bank.
find out from Mighty Deposits. And I can't remember if we have, do we have a link in the resource list for?
Yeah, I think we do. Let me just grab that list.
Okay.
You were just mentioned about rewards and things. Are there non-fossil fuel friendly cards that actually give you points and cash back?
I don't think that whether you get points and cash back is tied at all to the fossil fuel connection. So if that exists in the world of cards that are bad, it also exists in the world of cards that are good. Discover gives you plenty of cash back and is,
Okay. That's what I was, because I know certain people, oh, but I love my airplane points or whatever it is. I don't want to, give that up. But so you think
yeah.
there
You
are-
may discover that you do better to just get a card with cash back and use the cash back than what you get, than the actual value of the points. They're pretty good at marketing those points.
So we've divided the resource up into sections. So under the credit card section, there are a few different links, and one of them is to the climate-friendly credit cards guide that is published by Third Act Upstate New York. That it isn't a database. It's not searchable for. It's not searchable the way Mighty Deposits is searchable, but it gives you a good overview, and I believe mentions some of these. by
I think it'll list
some of them
many of
anyway.
these because that's where we got them.
But there's there are a couple of others. One is called Green America.
Green America.
Yeah, so that's a good place to look. And then there's one that's on here, a link on here to the Third Act, Move Your Money, Bank and Credit Card FAQs, and that's another place to look. And at the very beginning of the resource list, there are some links to sites with multiple resources. So if you check out those, then you will probably find answers to your questions about issuers.
Yeah,
Can
okay.
I just?
I didn't put those links in the slides, but go ahead.
Can I just take this moment to give a shout out to Green America? I've been a member since it was Co-op America, and they've got tons of great resources, and they're not an expensive member organization, but they've got great resources, and they have a credit card that I believe is issued by TCM Bank, I'm pretty sure, and has rewards.
There you go.
Yeah.
And do you have the forms to fill out your
I'm making it for real, I didn't remember first.
So, if you're gonna switch credit cards, you wanna remove the security freeze because otherwise the new company can't, maybe I should have put that before find a new card in a way, because you can't actually get them, they're not gonna issue the new card if they can't check your credit. And you wanna keep the old account active at the start, and maybe longer than that. You transfer all, it's similar to the bank, right? Transfer your automatic payments, if you have other authorized users on your card, you know, kids, siblings, whatever. They have to know, obviously, you want to pay down remaining balance or transfer it, but transfers are expensive. They're usually a substantial percentage compared to the interest you're paying. You want to call the company and let them know you want to close it. You want to get them to confirm that they have marked the account closed at customer request. This affects credit reports, right? You don't want it to look like it was closed because you did something wrong. And you can check that, you can check in your credit report, you can correct it if it's wrong, but the point is you want closed at customer request. And similar, we have templates from the same sources for writing a letter, and same, you might want to write to the new credit card company or bank. And sometimes, is this on the next? Yeah. When you switch cards, you want a new card with the same line of credit. Part of what goes into your credit score is the relationship between how much balance you have and how much credit you have. And if your credit score line decreases, then that ratio goes up, and then that reduces your credit score. Another way to deal with that is to leave the old cards open but not use them, at least for a period of time. Because the new card will tend, it depends on the institution and your finances, but will tend often to start with a lower credit limit. And also, you probably don't want to close everything if you're about to apply for a loan or mortgage, because it makes the credit report. You know, I am in no way a credit counselor, but my understanding is, you know, all that churn in the credit report doesn't look so great. And actually, I have a couple of my old cards still open but not used, partly for some of these reasons. So, and I think,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the age of your oldest credit card, I think, anyway, the age of your credit cards, how long you've had them,
Right.
does figure into your credit score. Probably not a huge difference, but it
Yeah.
is a factor.
any questions about credit cards before we move on?
Are older ones better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, if you're the credit, looking at somebody's credit and you say, oh, this person's had credit for 2 years and that one's had it for 20 years. And it, you know, if they're both in equally good shape, the 20-year one is a better risk. That's my understanding. Anybody, any other questions about credit cards? So easy to do, but you have to poke around and find the right one and who the issuer is. And I will switch with Sia. Here you go.
So we're going to talk about insurance. And let me just look at the resource list right now. Yeah, so there are some very useful insurance links on here, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the problem is complicated, I think, with insurance. Not only do many insurance companies invest in fossil fuel companies, but they also insure fossil fuel projects. So they're doing both things, which is pretty bad. The $582 billion in total insurance investment in fossil fuel. I don't remember what the time period is, but it's a lot of money. They really are heavily involved. And again, bigger insurance companies have more money to invest, so are more of a problem. But this list down here, one interesting point, so it's Berkshire Hathaway, State Farm, USAA, AIG, Nationwide, Allstate, Travelers, Liberty Mutual. The Hartford there was a really interesting story about the Hartford recently, which is that they refused to re-up the insurance for what it was an Audubon. It was a small.
Oh, yeah, it was a nonprofit.
It was a small nonprofit.
Yes, Connecticut-based, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Connecticut, and I don't know what their reason was, but it was.
It sounded like they were trying not to offend the politicians, the administration.
Yeah,
They
that's
didn't say
probably
that.
what it was. That's
Right.
probably what it was.
Can I add one thing here?
Yeah, yeah.
Which just, people probably already know this, but in case the connection isn't clear, the reason they're investing all that money is when you pay them the premium, they have to put all that money somewhere so that if you have a claim, they can pay the claim. So they invest it.
Right. But you can make good choices here too. And there are some good choices there, especially in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we have some good, or better anyway, choices. And you can find, this is a Green America Climate Smart Insurance Directory is one of the resources on the list. And it is a growing database, growing directory. And they are sort of asking people to submit insurance companies for them to vet. And once they're vetted, they can go into this directory. So it's becoming a really good place to search. So we've got an A grade, which includes Union Mutual of Vermont, Utica. There's a B grade, Amica, which is, you're insured with Amica too, right? So both of us are, and it's a pretty good company. Arbella is, I believe, also in Massachusetts, at
That's
least, yeah. And there are others. So this is a good place to look, that directory. There's also a really good resource called Insure Our Future, which not only gives you information on specific companies, but it gives you sort of a general overview of how this works for insurance companies, what their role is in fossil fuels. And then some advice is to get quotes. You can get quotes through an agent, or you can get quotes in some cases directly from the company. In some cases you can't go directly to the company. And
Like with Amica, we've only ever dealt directly with the company.
Yeah.
Never dealt with an agent.
Yeah, Amica has the best customer service.
But they do invest some.
Well, they got a B grade, but I don't remember why.
Yeah, I don't remember why either, but they are generally a good company in this regard.
Green America Climate Smart Insurance. Can I look up my insurance company on that?
If it's already in there, as I said, it's a growing database.
But
Yeah.
Amica is what I was referring to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Amica's in there.
And they might have a B grade because of where they invest or what they insure.
Mm-hmm.
It could be either.
I don't know if this is on the slide somewhere, but one of the pieces of advice that we've read is to shop around every so often and to ask for different quotes, quotes from different agents. Nope, that's the end of insurance. Here you go.
Okay.
Yes.
I have an insurance-related question before we move on. Where do health insurance companies come in here?
I've never looked at that.
We have not, don't know the answer, but
Well,
that's a
I'm
good
sure
question.
they're all supporting the pharmaceutical industry, which is bad enough.
And it seems to me it's an industry in wild transition,
That's right.
especially right now. So I don't know the answer, that's a great question.
It seems to me, again, having no expertise in the area, like health insurance is a little bit different, right? With home insurance, health insurance, almost all your insured customers are using it frequently,
All the time.
right? Whereas home insurance, you're only using if you have an unexpected event. So
But
their
they're still in
investment
it.
model must be different.
And they're
because-
still in it for the profit, though, like Blue Cross
Well,
Blue
right.
Shield, for example.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're an umbrella organization with state affiliates, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, good question for
yeah.
next
I
time.
don't know, that's a good
Think
question.
about it.
I wanted to add one thing about insurance that I just was thinking about, which is the message C is giving you here is the exact same message that we gave you about banks and credit cards, right? Big national, stay away from it.
Yeah.
You know, that's not, maybe there's some big national insurance company that's good, but if you look at that list of ones that were problematic, they're all big national insurance companies. So local works better for all of those. Okay, investments are a little bit different, and I will repeat the disclaimer. We are not investment advisors. We're not giving you investment advice. In fact, nothing here is going to tell you what to invest in anyway. It's more how to figure this out. So here's the problem. Most investors put most or all of their money into mutual funds. And a mutual fund holds a portfolio of usually fairly diverse stocks and bonds. And they have a whole bunch of things they hold, and then a whole bunch of people who are investing in that fund. And they pool all that money from the investors and buy stocks and bonds. And every fund has its own strategy, etc. But most people's investments are held in mutual funds. And many mutual funds invest in fossil fuels and companies that work in that industry.
Can I add something to that? There are mutual funds, Domini is one, there are a number that are called socially responsible.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just giving the general definition.
Great, great.
If you look at the world of mutual funds overall, lots of them invest in fossil fuels. But there are so many out there that there's also plenty that don't.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And we'll talk about how to find those because they're really good resources.
Well, and having the label socially responsible doesn't guarantee that it's what you want.
Right. Exactly. There's lots of people who will describe what they're doing with a word like sustainability. And then that might not be what you mean by sustainability. Some investors buy stocks or bonds of individual companies rather than investing in mutual funds. And that's a more direct investment, but often less diverse, right? The mutual fund is investing in dozens and dozens, and the individual investor might be investing in fewer things. But either way, the issues you're going to run into are the same. So most people don't buy or sell investments themselves. Their investments, even if they're investing in individual stocks or bonds, are managed by an investment firm, an asset manager. And that's a company that you pay to manage your money, invest your money, right? Because you don't have a license to buy and sell things on the New York Stock Exchange, but they do. Or they have somebody they work with who does. And again, the manager may invest in fossil fuels and the associated companies. So the big asset managers like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Capital Group, those are among the biggest shareholders in fossil fuel companies. But this is something Michael was pointing out to us when we were talking. They're investing on behalf of their clients, right? They're making those investments because that's what their clients want to invest in. And in general, the asset manager's job is to help you invest in what you want to invest in. So it's a little tricky. Like if you look at the largest investors in any of the problematic companies, this is the list: BlackRock, Vanguard. But they're doing it because that's what their clients are asking for. And I wouldn't say the clients are asking, oh, I would love to invest in everything in fossil fuels. They're saying, get me a good return, and we think this mix of stocks will get us a good return, and that includes fossil fuels. But when you multiply that by a few tens of millions, they're big investors. If you are choosing your own stocks and mutual funds, select fossil fuel funds, and this is what we were just saying about socially responsible, make sure they're really fossil free. The best resource for this is As You Sow, and we will send you this link. You can look up any mutual fund and it will tell you what it's invested in and where that's problematic and where it is not. It's an excellent resource. It's sort of the equivalent to Mighty Deposits for looking at mutual funds. If you're investing in individual stocks, where you're going to the asset manager saying, I want to be invested in this company, and this company, and this company, there isn't a great resource for that. You have to look up the company and see what they do. And it's not hard to learn about what companies do, but there isn't a let's list all the climate-friendly companies resource that we have. If you're not making the choice, but you have a manager working for you making the choice, you tell them what you want, and that's their job. That's what you're paying them for, is to do things like invest in funds that are really fossil-free and not just, sound good. And there are plenty of managers who are well-versed in climate-friendly investing. I did find a good site for financial advisor, which is different from an asset manager, right? That's not the person making the investments. That's the person helping you figure out, giving you financial advice. Values advisor can be helpful, but it doesn't have a huge, I think there are way more climate-focused advisors than what are on their list. But the point is, if you're doing mutual funds, you can use As You Sow. If you're working with an asset manager, then their job is to sit down with you and say, what do you want? And make them earn their money. I mean, get them to show you why the thing that they're saying is sustainable is sustainable. The amount of control you have over investment strategy varies. If you have an IRA or your own brokerage account, you have control over everything. You just have to work with the manager to get it to be what you want. If it's an institutional account, like an employer retirement plan, you may have options within that, but those are set up by the employer typically. And you really have, for an employer plan, you can push who's managing it for transparencies, because the first, I think maybe we should put this in the slide in a way. The first thing you need is disclosure, right? You need to know what, like if you're investing in a fund and not an individual stock, you need to know where it's going and how much climate risk there is. So you can look for transparency and try to switch funds within an employer plan, and that would apply to retirees as well. For government plans, this is something we're involved in with a different piece of our work in finance and pensions. You have to lobby for the change, right? Anybody here a Massachusetts public retiree? Yeah, those funds are managed by PRIM, and they make their decisions about what they think is best, and the only way to get them to change what they think is best is to get the legislature to
So
tell
my
them.
pension, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was going to ask what happens to state pensions. If
Yeah.
there's any way of tracing it,
Well, so there's two issues. One is disclosure,
right?
and one is investment strategy,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And there's some bills now that we've been working on that require climate risk assessment, disclosure of the climate risks.
And is this all on Third Act website, like all the legislative stuff?
No,
No,
no. But we can send you information about it.
Yeah,
It's
we
just
can.
something we've been working on for a couple of years, but the effort actually goes back 10
And
years.
this is really something that little people like us can do,
Yeah,
yeah,
as opposed to, stopping the $400 billion plane from being delivered. Just among
that's
other
harder
things.
probably, yeah.
yeah, I mean, actually, we're at a point, or just about at a point where there's a bill that's filed, it's a good bill, we have pretty much the material that you could take you to your legislator and say, I want you to sponsor
This is about
bill.
disclosure particularly?
It's
It's
about
both.
risk assessment, disclosure, and ultimately, if you find the investments to have climate risk, they have to change them. So,
Okay.
this is a tricky thing, and I mean, this is not relevant to everybody. Well, I guess it is, in the sense that taxpayers back up the state pensions, but it's tricky in Massachusetts. Although the legislature has required divestment of the pension funds in certain cases before, South Africa, for example, they are nevertheless seem to be somewhat allergic to the word divestment. And so, you know, the bill says you have to assess the risk, and then if it's a bad risk, you have to get rid of it, which it's hard to argue with.
Well, one of the things that you may be interested in, and I don't have the numbers in my head, but there have been studies that show that well, there's one in particular that shows over a 10-year period, if I think it was 5 or 8 pension funds that were studied, if they had divested from fossil fuels 10 years earlier, they would have earned, I don't remember, some big amount of money more than they did. So people are afraid that taking your money out of fossil fuel investments is going to lose you money. That's been pretty well demonstrated not to be the case.
Yeah, and the original study is the University of Waterloo in Ontario, but there have been several since that came to the same conclusions, that the climate risk investments are also financial risk investments.
Yeah, well, we want them out of business. Of course they're at risk, right?
Right. Well, but also there are businesses at risk because of the rapid transition to renewables worldwide.
Right.
You know,
And
even
that's
if
where
we
we
weren't
should
doing
be investing
anything,
our
the
money, right?
technology and the market is driving a bunch of it. So,
So I have a couple of questions. One is, so I know that at various points in time, different environmental groups have purchased specifically large shares in some of the fossil fuel companies so that they could then bring votes in front of, you know, in the end. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
that's a great question, and we have lots of thoughts on it.
Yeah, why don't you take that?
I'll start. So we run into this because the Massachusetts State Pension Fund that we've been working on has a sustainability committee, and their argument is we're doing all this great stuff with voting our shares. And so that's where I've sort of learned about it. And my sense is that is not a particularly effective strategy. It lets you, it's a good PR strategy in the sense that you can go to that meeting and bring things up. But my personal experience, and again, not with deep expertise, is that the people who do this rarely report on how successful the votes were. We voted for this awesome thing, and then we voted for that awesome thing, and then we voted for this great candidate for the board of directors. But they don't tell you whether anybody won or any of their proposals won. And my impression is typically things that oppose the board's views don't win at corporate meetings. So this is engagement versus divestment, right? That's the strategic argument. And there are people, I will say on the other hand, that's my personal opinion. There are people who are very committed to working on climate who think engagement is important. So I'm not sort of saying, oh, well, those engagement people are like all, you know, just greenwashing. Some of them are trying really hard to do the right thing, but it's not my sense that it's very effective.
And the other question I had is, so are you looking just at the state retirement plan? Because there are several others, and I'm sorry, so I'm on the municipal light board here in Hudson. It's just a local. And so there are 3 different investment things that we have. One is the OPEB money, one is basically retirement money for employees, and then it's the money that we're investing for future projects. So in other words, you're carrying money forward. One of those is restricted. There are only 30 companies that you can invest in. And so that's clearly a decision made by somebody at the state, and I just wonder if you're taking a look at, you know, how one would go about changing who those 30 companies are.
So what we've been working on is specifically the Massachusetts public pensions. And you can only change that through legislation. I suspect it's the same with that. I don't know whether that's something anybody's looking at yet. I'm kind of familiar with that list because I remember our library trustees were only allowed to invest off of a list.
Right. So I think that I'll dig into this more, because I was just fascinated to see what the list is. And they're all, I mean, they're just gigantic companies, so, all across the board. But, so if they're not fossil fuel companies, they probably got their own other issues that, so at some point when you're investing money, like you said, you can't let the best be the, goblin of the better. But, I think that the fact that somebody's saying these are the only 30, it's like, who decided that?
Yeah.
It sounds like somebody thought, we don't want to let those local folks pick their own companies, so we're going to pick a bunch that we know aren't risky, which maybe we would disagree with that assessment, but.
I think that's essentially what but it was a decision made quite a while ago, and those 30 companies haven't changed in a while.
In terms of retirement funds, we should say that we're talking about state retirement funds. The vast majority, I would think, of municipal retirement funds are part of that system.
Right.
Yeah, and the rest of them are governed by the same rules.
Yeah, so the fact that it's a local retirement thing instead of a state might not matter. It might all be in the state system.
I think at least the investment of what we're doing with the money that's being held essentially for future projects is under a different, and
That's gonna
we
be-
have an outside manager that deals with it.
Yep.
I just want to call your attention when you get this resource list that at the beginning there are some sites with lots of different resources, and there are a couple that are especially useful. Nerd Wallets, comprehensive article on socially responsible banking, gives really good overviews. Third Act has a responsible finance resources archive, so there's lots in there. There's that organization called This Is What We Did that has some really practical ideas for doing things. Rivers and Mountains Green Faith is Michael Richardson's organization, although I think he's going to be moving some of his things to a different site. But there are actual investment workshops slides that you can see on there.
And some of them will look sort of familiar because we took some stuff.
Right,
from it.
we borrowed heavily. 350 Mass is just embarking on some investment workshops that we don't have much information about yet, but because it's a brand new thing for them. But if you're specifically interested in investing, that may be a really good resource for you. And then Green America, I believe, is the place that has also some recorded workshops. I just wanted to say one thing, which is, if all of this feels daunting, you don't have to do it all at once. You can take a piece of it and do what you're ready for. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
And after you do the first one, the second one's easier.
Well, I want to thank Tom and Sia for coming.
Thank you.